What's up, guys and gals?
What is up, YouTube? All right, we're going to run through what we're using the most of, our top 5s for Attys and mods. So, Brandon, what's your number 1 mod right now? What are you using?
Number 1 mod right now for me is the Hades clone.
Ironic.
I got this.
Mine too.
I got this from c2cvaping.com. The reason I think it's my favorite device is the battery that goes inside this is a 26650, and it gets really good life, and it also hits really, really good.
See, the number 1 for my mod is also the Hades. It doesn't last as long for me because usually I'm vaping real low ohms, but it still hits like a train, you know? And it feels good to hold. It feels odd when I go back to an 18650 after holding this all day.
Absolutely. It's, without sounding too out there, it's girthy. It's got some mass to it. It's got some weight to it. And it just feels very durable. And
I only have one, but mine's from Fastech. All right, what's your number 2?
Number 2 for me is the Proto Vapor DNA 30 that I received from protovapor.com. And the reason this is number 2 for me is because obviously the DNA 30 gives you a consistent vape. I also like the fact that Proto Vapor does a 18650 of your choice, which I have a VTC4 in here. Lasts really long. It vapes consistent, and it's just always just ready to go. Whether it's dead or not, I can plug it in the USB and just vape away. So that's my number 2.
My number 2 is the Copper Nemesis. It is, you know what? It was really close to pick number 1, number 2, and 3. I mean, and it just hits better than the rest of them. And I did notice that, like, out of both of our lists, we picked a lot of mechanicals, but that's what we're vaping right now. That's why. All right, let's go right to number 3.
Number 3 for me is the Stingray. The Stingray mod, the reason I picked it as number 3 is because, other than its beauty, it is a very, very hard-hitting 18650. Obviously, out of my whole collection of devices, my Stingray is my hardest-hitting 18650. It just hits hard. It's a beautiful mod. It always fires, and for me, it's a lot of it is the fact that it hits so hard, and the fact that it is always just a looker. Like, anytime I pick it up, I mean, I just look at it, and I love holding it in my hand. I love vaping it. So,
yep.
How about you, Nerf?
The Copper is, I mean, the Stingray is also my 3rd, but because it reminds me a lot of the Nemesis, and I really like the ease of use of the Nemesis. It works. It was great, and it still is one of my top favorites. But it hits way harder than a normal Nemesis. Now the Copper Nemesis, it's really close by 2 and 3, so I put the Copper. I think it hits a hair harder. But as far as a non-Copper mod, the Stingray 18650 is the hardest hitting one I had by far.
Absolutely,
I agree with that. And it looks great when you close it up. You don't see that seam. Over time, you might notice it more, but like I didn't even notice that there was a seam there in between the battery tubes. That's how flawless it was.
Yeah, absolutely. For a clone, I gotta agree, Nerva, and I gotta say that China did absolutely fantastic work on this device. I mean, I think that they took that mod and they just made it absolutely the same as an authentic Stingray. It's absolutely beautiful. I agree.
Yeah, and mine is also from Fastech. I don't know where you got yours.
I got one from Fastech, and I also got one from venerablevaping.com, which you can see just real quick comparison. This is the Fastech brass Stingray, and this is the Venerable Vaping brass Stingray.
The polished one?
Right? Yes, the polished is from Venerable Vaping, is the polished brass. This one is just a standard brass from Fastech.
You guys have seen it, so we don't need to get too uppy-closey, if you will.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go. What's next? Number 4.
Number 4 for me is the Panzer. One of the main things about me, since I got into 26650 devices, is I have a really hard time stepping back into the 1800 series devices because the Hades is so wide. Like, it's a handful for me. I mean, not a full handful, but I mean, it just feels more girthy and durable in the hand. So for me, the Panzer is number 4 because it's an 1800 series battery. And I think the only reason the Stingray beat it up is because the Stingray just hits so much harder and is better looking. But for me, number 4 is the Panzer. It's a beautiful machine device, but it's also very durable. It feels heavy in the hand, and it vapes really, really well. It hits very hard, and I just love it because it's the closest 1800 series battery I have, or battery tube that I have, that is closest to the 26650 series.
And that one's from Fastech?
Yes, this Panzer is the clone from Fastech.
Yeah.
Yep. How about you, Nerva? Number 4.
I went with the King. It is still one of my favorites because you can hybrid it, and that is, the one saving grace. The big, knurling knot makes it easy to unlock because the Nemesis does have the one problem where if you get all the way to the top or all the way to the bottom, sometimes it gets stuck. You really don't have that problem so much with that big, nut-like, bottom locking ring, and you can hybrid it, and it hits incredibly well. And I got this one from AJ at Venable Vaping. So let's see, what's your last number 5?
Number 5 for mods for me is by a long shot probably one of my most favorable devices. The reason it is further down the list for me is because, as I said before, the 26650 series is more geared towards what I've been vaping with lately. But the Nemesis is a device that I have several of, and I'm saying the Nemesis is my number 5. This is my copper Nemesis where I put the aluminum black tubes, and you can see I have several different Nemesises here in different configurations with different Attys. I love the Nemesis. I mean, you see by the amount that I have that you would think this would be my number 1 device, but I gotta say, for me, since I'm kind of moving more into that 26650 series, they feel really small in the hand. They hit really, really well. These aluminum tubes, which I got from Fastech, are phenomenally machined. And the Nemesis overall is a fantastic machine. It hits hard. It seems like the battery has a tendency to last a little bit longer than some of my other 18650 batteries. Because of, I think it's just the contacts. It has pretty nice contacts in there. The battery seems to hit and last a little bit longer. And I gotta say, I mean, I would say it would be higher if I didn't have the Hades. But since I have moved a little bit more towards the 26650 genre of mods, I just think that's why the Nemesis is where it is. Don't get me wrong, it's a great device.
Well, ironically, I also thought the Nemesis was my number 5 because
absolutely,
not only is it easy to use and it works really well, it's not the hardest hitting mod, but it hits just fine. I mean, there's a couple of reasons. One is because I have it hybrid on the 3D dripper. Now, it'll hit a little less when you don't have it mechanical, but I do, and there's mechanical kits now out where you could make your Nemesis mechanical. I mean, not mechanical, hybrid. And there are a lot of other devices that we were looking at, and I was like, they're good, but they're not what I use often, or they don't hit as hard, or, there's reasons, but, like, it does seem like we are very mechanical-oriented right now. That's just where we are right now. I mean, there was a time where we used a lot of our other devices more.
Yep.
And hopefully this list will change over time. But for right now, let's just move on right to Attys. What is your top Atty? Go ahead, let's see it.
My top Atty, and I have several new Attys that have come out that have been cloned. I have a few authentics, not many, but just a few. But these will be clones, with an exception of the Patriot. I gave the Patriot the number 1 spot for me because to me the Patriot, and I have it here on my Stingray, is a phenomenal Atty. I wish it had airflow control, but it doesn't. But for me, it's just always my go-to Atty. Like, it just hits well. The flavor's great. It just has a tendency to always work. I don't have any problems with the posts. I only had to drill the hole out on one of my Patriots, which is good. And it's always works. I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, it doesn't have the best looks, doesn't have the best options, but it just always works. It gives you the flavor you're looking for, and that's mine. So what's your number 1, Nerva?
I also with the Patriot, but I think the Patriot's going to get phased out soon from the top of the list because it's a 3-post system, and now we're looking at the 4-post where you have the two, center pin having the block on top. And I
Hmm.
like that more. And there's a lot of other devices Attys I do like a lot, but the rsst just works really well, and it's easy to build. It's not difficult, and a lot of people care about this adjusting airflow, but for the most part, the adjusting airflows aren't big enough for what I usually vape anyways. I usually drill them out to about 1/8.
Yep.
So if it has an airflow or not, it doesn't matter. I'm going to drill it out, But what's your number 2?
Awesome. My number 2 is the Crown. Now, since I got the Crown, and by the way, I got this from venerablevaping.com. It is the Crown clone. Since I've gotten this, I have been extremely impressed with the build quality. I've been extremely impressed with the flavor, the vapor, and this is probably one of the first Attys I've ever gotten that I have left, at least in the last 6 months, that I've left the stock air holes in. The biggest size is 2 mil on this device. It has adjustable airflow. It has several different sizes. I would say there's a slight con in the fact you can't run single configuration, which most of the Attys you'll see that I enjoy are more set up for dual coil because that's my personal preference. But to me, the Crown is just an exceptional device. And if I was going to compare it to anything, I would compare it mostly to the Trident V1 because it's almost the same exact kind of vape. Only difference is the looks. The post holes are a lot bigger than on the Trident, and it doesn't have like the slots that the Trident has. And then again, just the looks. I mean, the looks of this Atty are just phenomenal. I would say that within the next week or so, after I put this thing through more of its paces, I would say this will probably pop up to my number 1. But since I use the Patriot so much, and it's just been such a great Atty, I had to go with the Patriot. So what's your first Atty there, Nerva? Or second Atty,
I went
sorry.
with the rsst because, let's face it, dripping is good and fun. I love it at the house, but when I go out, I want something, with a little bit more ease of use, especially if you're driving and this and that. It's a pain to be dripping and driving.
Oh, drip and drive, man, drip and drive.
So I went with I love the rsst. It is my favorite Genesis. I think that I have. I don't have a Crown, so there's gonna be some that aren't on a list because we don't have them or haven't tried them. And it is just my favorite as far as the Genesis goes. I do have a lot of drippers. I do have a couple Genesis, but the Genesis, that one's my favorite right there. That's my number 2.
Fantastic. Well, my number 3 is the Brass Monkey, and I have it right here on my brass Nemesis. Obviously, the brass end caps with the red copper tube, but this is the Brass Monkey. And the reason I think the Brass Monkey is such a great device, number 1, is because it has the option, or it comes with 2 caps. And if you see here on the Stingray, you will see that the brass cap is on my iGo base, okay, which is completely awesome because basically you get 2 Attys out of 1 as far as caps go. But it is an awesome vape. Like I said, this is the second Atty I've never not drilled out. It is absolutely a great flavor Atty, but the one thing I love about it the most is the post setup. It comes with, and you won't be able to see this, but it has the Helios style post setup where basically it has a block in the center, okay, and it has the 2 negative posts on the outside. It is very, very easy to build. And the other great thing is it has a slight reduced chamber where it minimizes the airflow and the cap size, so that way you get an exceptional amount of flavor. So for me, my number 3 is the Brass Monkey. I got this from venerablevaping.com, and again, it's a great Atty. So, Nerva, what's your number 3?
Number 3 was the AOS, which I also got from AJ. We mentioned AJ a lot because that's where we got him. He has great prices. I can't beat it. But I got the AOS because it's made for hybrid. You just put it on. It fits the King mod. It fits the Chi Hammer. It fits a couple other ones. And then you have a hybrid. That's it. I know AJ has them and the Fast Tech has them. I have one from each, actually. And They are just if you have one of those mods, that is the thing to get. Even though it is only 2 posts, I did take off the whole auto dripping part and just use it as a plain dripper. So now I have a hybrid dripper, and it hits really well.
Absolutely. And if I can make a comment on the AOS, because it is not on my top 5 list, but I got to tell you, for a device that is not set up as a dripper, that can be converted, as you see here, I have it on my Real Chiyu. It is an absolutely stunning vape. I mean, I drilled the air holes out to like 9/64ths on mine, because the more air you get in there, the better it has. It's better it seems to vape. But for a conversion type thing, where we basically took something, converted it into something else, it is an absolutely stunning vape. And if it wasn't for the fact that I just received so many new drippers, I think it might be on my list for top 5. But for me, it's just something I'm not used all the time. So.
And it's ironic because that is a 2-post system versus most of our drippers now are 3, or with the block in the center, or now they have a lot of 5-post and this and that. But it's the hybrid mode. It is all it does is hybrid. It doesn't come with like a 510 adapter. It is hybrid or nothing. So let's go down. What's next?
Absolutely. For me, number 4 on the list is the Stellaire. The Cartel Mod Stellaire. I have it here on my Hades. There is a few things, a few quirks with this Addy. Number 1 for me is the fact that the cap is so hard to get off. But the slotted air holes that are in this mod are just breathers, man. I mean, if you're a lung hitter, especially since, if you're a sub-ohmer like I am, this thing has massive air holes. I don't even think Nerva would drill this thing out. It is just a phenomenal vape. It is a tanker when it comes to vapor and it comes to flavor. Now, it is less of a flavor hound than some of the other Attys I'm going to talk about today, but it is overall, to me, a very good vape. I will say one thing about it is if you do happen to get a Stellaire, be aware that it has this like juice drip type guard inside this cap, which is, I guess, supposed to keep the juice from firing up into your mouth, which I am going to end up drilling out. But just be aware of that because it does reduce quite a bit of vapor, which to me affects the flavor. Excuse me. But overall, it is a great-looking Addy. It vapes well, and that's why it's my number 4.
I have noticed that a lot of things that we keep saying is you didn't have to drill it out. And the last Addy I can think of that didn't have to drill out was the Omega. But it's not on my list. My number 4 is the Kraken, because I like that as another Genesis. And I know, like, there's a lot of people who don't use Genesis or don't use hybrids or don't use mechanical. That's okay. That's just what we're using right now. But the Kraken, I got the e-cigar version from Focal e-cig when they had a deal on it. So this one actually, the cap around it actually screws on, and it has an e-cigar. No, it's really. I still even had to drill that out, But it's a great overall Genesis. It's a great drip.
Well, what I was going to say about the Kraken Nerva is I don't have the screw-on type, which I think for me is one of the negatives, because as we all know, the Kraken has that problem where it's so tight over the glass. So the fact that you have threads there, I think, was a really good idea for them to clone differently. I think that just goes to show China's minor innovation in making things better.
e-cigar always likes to do something a little different on their mods, so that's what they did. And there's the H for the numbers, and it works well. Like I have it in auto dripper mode, so it's just cotton down microcoil, and it works really well. I mean, it keeps up. It's good, So
absolutely.
What's your last Addy?
Okay, number 5 for me, and this was a very challenging decision for me, which is funny because number 1 through 4 were easy. Number 5 for me was challenging, simply because I have so many drippers that are in contest with each other for the number 5 spot. But for me, I went ahead and went with the Quasar. Now, just to give you just a clear and concise idea of this Quasar dripper, I haven't really put it through its paces overall. But for me, the build quality, the air holes are slotted, okay, which you can see there, but they're way smaller than the Stellaire are, which to me I think helps the overall flavor of this Addy. Because if you were going to ask me the Quasar versus the Stellaire, which one has better flavor, I would say the Quasar hands down. Again, my personal opinion. But for some reason, the Quasar is attractive to me because it just has a nice square-like type look to it, which is somewhat similar to a lot of other Addies, but it just looks a little bit more professional. The vapor on this thing is not as productive as some of the other Addies because the air holes are a little bit smaller. But again, the airflow control, the flavor, and the vapor all together, I went ahead and gave the Quasar, I would say, over the Eos, my number 5 spot, just simply because it's a newer Addy. It has a different type of look about it, and it has a really good ability to give you really good flavor. So that was my number 5.
See,
and by the way,
go ahead.
sorry, Nerva, I apologize. By the way, I did get this from venerableVaping.com. So what's your number 5?
I went with the Helio, and I have the clear cap from Fast Tech on it, just because I love the ease of building when you have that block. You don't have to like fight wires and all this, because some of the mods, like when you start going lower in gauge, you either have to drill it out because they have really small holes to put it through, or if you use lower gauge, trying to wrap it around a screw and then screw it down, sometimes the wire slips out. Using that block, I think that's probably where most Addies are leading towards because it's so easy to build.
Absolutely.
And it does. It makes it a lot easier, you know?
Absolutely.
So what's your favorite? Tell us in the comments if you want. We don't have all the mods and we don't have all the Addies, so there's going to be some that, sure, we would love it. You know, things like the GI2, but, you know, we don't have it, then we can't tell you it's not in our list. This is just our personal list, what we are using now and what we like the most and are using the most frequent now.
I agree 100%. And like I said, I would really like to get a Magna because it's a device I'm really interested in seeing how it works since it's such a wide hole that comes up under the coil. Looking into buying one of those, but like Nerva said, I agree. I think all of you, I hope you enjoy the list. These are just our own personal ideas of what we're vaping with every day and our top 5 of each. Please tell us in the comments what you guys like. And hey, maybe we'll go out and get it, try it out for you guys for review. And like we always say, have a vape and peace out.
Peace.
Did you start it yet? 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 Let it snow, let it snow. I don't know the rest of the song.